I mean, it's the cultural hub, and it's like the freaky weird people, you know? And I'm a freaky weird person, so I was like, dude, I feel way more comfortable here.
It's like living in the South, hometown, you know, Southern hospitality at its best, but big city. So I love that about it.
Kind of crazy, but also always creative, and a kind of a nonchalant attitude towards laws and what you're supposed to do, you know.
In the heart of the South, Atlanta represents an escape from much of what it is to be Southern. In that spirit, the city is made up of small neighborhoods that each have their own history and characters. Unlike many other cities, Atlanta is split across the border of 2 large counties. This leaves Atlanta with a myriad of overlapping jurisdictions. At the crossroads of these dividing lines is a neighborhood called Little Five Points. Originally just a corner gas station and a hardware store, it became a mecca for artists, musicians, and freaks. Atlanta has changed a lot since those early days, but this little corner of weirdness still survives.
Little Five Points, you know, what is it? It's, you know, there's Inman Park, there's Candler Park, and those, and somewhere in the middle of them, somewhere straddling this thing, and Edgewood really too, I mean, is Little Five Points. Is it its own neighborhood, or is it, you know, part of these other neighborhoods? It's both.
In spite of it being crazy, it's not like it was like there was not like a whirlwind of activity at any particular year or even decade. You know, it just was this slow and steady thing of moving forward inch by inch.
Oh, it was so exciting the first time I came to Little Five because I'd heard so many stories about going to Little Five Points. I had heard that there were the coolest shoe stores, and you could buy leather jackets and comic books and posters and records, and everything that you could ever want was in Little Five. So I came, and the first store I remember going to was Junkman's Daughter, and it was when it was on Euclid Avenue, and it was across the street from Seven Under. It was like in the 80s, and they had these big chairs that you sat in that were shaped like hands to try on your shoes.
My first experiences in Little Five were when I was a teenager, and I knew that it was like the cool part of town, and really I was mainly interested in criminal records because I knew I couldn't get into the bars, you know, and I'm a musician, so I was super into buying compact discs, so I would go to criminal records.
I started coming to the neighborhood when I was about 13 years old. I took Marta up from Roswell, Georgia. When I was younger, I would be carted around with a parent of a friend or something like that, but as I got a little older and into high school, I used to come tool around here as, you know, like go to Junkman's and do all like the touristy stuff. I probably bought a far too large poster at Junkman's Daughter. One of the multicolored you know, Apple-inspired Beatles pictures. It was like, you know, this big and like this tall and shit like that. And I came home and my mom was just like, why did you get that? Like, where are you going to put that? And I said, the ceiling. And it still hangs there to this day.
I didn't belong as a kid, and that always bothered me. If only I'd known that one day my differentness would be an asset, then my early life would have been much easier. Bette Midler.
I was raised to be a redneck. I mean, really. We were down in the South. My family is from around here in Alabama. I'm really happy to have been, to have that influence.
Sure.
You know, both of them, it's great. But, so I was a failed redneck. Really, I just wasn't tough enough or mean enough. And so I picked up that nickname, you know, because of that.
Well, in high school, I was most assuredly a weirdo theater kid, I guess you could say. The theater was a safe haven, but so was Little 5 Points, but for opposite reasons. The theater is where people looked at you, and Little 5 Points is where I could stare at other people.
I know in middle school and high school, I had a tough time. I actually went like through an entire year not talking to anyone in school.
Yeah, I felt strange in the suburbs, and I didn't feel included in sort of the culture or lack thereof that existed in the suburbs.
I grew up in Florida. Everyone is really sort of conservative, and I'm queer, and my parents are Pentecostals, stuff like that. At a certain point, I knew I had to leave. Just because I couldn't stay there and be healthy.
I got drugged to Pennsylvania for my last 2 years of high school, and that was such a hard place. People would walk up to me there and go, "I hear you're that new girl from the South, say something."
A deep sense of love and belonging is an irreducible need of all people. We are biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to love, to be loved, and to belong. Brene Brown.
But 84 is about when I first showed up down here. Meeting, I was one of like the 5 punk rock kids at my high school, and was actually nervous, heard tales of Little 5 Points and the Metroplex, and was a little nervous about coming down here the first time. Will you come with us and it'll be cool?
I was drawn to Little 5 Points when I was a teenager. I could see bands here. I could see art that I couldn't see in other places.
It was shiny and dirty at the same time, and I liked that. It didn't have any businesses that I could readily recognize anywhere else, so that made it unique, I guess. Independent businesses were there, and I grew up in the suburbs, so I was used to Blockbuster and Let Us Surprise You.
I ended up in Little 5 Points because I had left my first wife for my girlfriend who lived here in Little 5 Points, and started hanging out with her. We ended up getting an apartment together over on Austin Avenue. Basically, I have not left Little 5 Points since then, except for when I move out of state to Florida periodically.
We decided we needed to move to Atlanta. That's where all the hippies were going. Oh, we came over for a huge rock festival. Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention playing at the Braves Stadium with Flo and Eddie. It was ginormous. And that's when we all knew we had to move over here. So they came over and found us an apartment to live in. Just happened to be in Inman Park.
Coming to Atlanta and Little 5 Points really, it meant a lot of different things to me. It meant getting out of a small town where I felt like people were a lot more closed-minded than I was willing to want to dwell with for any longer. And it meant maybe having more chances to play an open mic or find people that were like-minded to make music with.
It's always been a lot of hippies in Little 5 Points, so I think that kind of is what attracted to me to the area initially. It was I grew up in upstate New York near Woodstock, and I went to my college town was a big hippie school, so.
And they're still here.
Yeah, they're still here. They're all gray-haired like me now.
There's no being gentle about it. It was a dump. About every 4th storefront was closed up and had been for some time. Both the theaters down on Euclid were closed up and had been for, I don't know exactly, but a long while. Even by 76, they'd been shut down already for, I dare say, a decade.
Oh, it was completely different from what it was now. It was actually just it was re-emerging from a lot of the storefronts and things in Little 5 were vacant. And it was just starting to kind of come back into its own and rebuild.
There was just a conglomerate of empty buildings and odd little businesses, and you could just walk everywhere, and but you just didn't want to walk around the neighborhood at night because it was a little sketchy.
I would be lying to tell you I envisioned the Little 5 Points of today, or even the Little Five of by the early 90s. It was like, it was so bleak back then.
The yacht club, it was new, but it quickly caught on. And then you had the Point, which was a focal point for a lot of live music and stuff like that. And you had Fellini's Pizza up there then and stuff like that. So the square itself really wasn't what it was yet. It was still starting to be turned into the square, and Little 5 Points becoming more of a central focus point for businesses and things like that. So it was a lot dirtier. It's always been homeless in Little 5 Points and stuff, but they were really pretty bad back then. Lot of junkies, a lot of ODs back then, more so than now even, sure. Which is still a lot, but it was it was just forming into what is now Little 5 Points, I would say.
There's a lot of businesses that have come and gone, but that's kind of the nature of Atlanta as a whole. However, unlike a lot of parts of town, the businesses that really are part of the community here that have stuck around ain't going nowhere.
There was not any sort of used record store in Atlanta, and talked to me about, hey, you want to do that again? We'll concentrate on used records and used books. And being a janitor at the time, decided that it would be worth a shot if we could pull it off.
What Del and Faye did in creating Seven Stages and not only a theater company in '79, they also were really strong about staying committed to this neighborhood, because they saw that there were stories that need to be told right here. They wanted to really have a home base for people to come to.
We opened in February of '81. I was contacted by Kelly Jordan, who was reaching out to the Georgia Pharmacy Association, looking for a young pharmacist that might want to open a pharmacy. Came home, woke my wife up, and said, I think I found where I want to build a pharmacy. And growing up in New York, where I did in the Bronx, in a neighborhood, I felt that this had a strong neighborhood feel to it. It was only getting better and stronger, and so I figured this was going to be the right place for me. And 36 years later, I still believe this is the right place for me. So,
trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I realized, it's just pretty simple. I just got high and hung out in bars. I had this crazy idea to start a bar with nothing, with no money. $5,000 is what I had, and me and a couple of partners found this spot. So we just moved a few blocks away from Manuals, and we sort of did Manuals on LSD, I think is what because it's a really offbeat. There's music and, and it was in Little 5 Points, and I walked in the door. This place was for rent, and sure enough, I walked in here and I knew this was it. I just knew, and I felt at home. That was when I felt at home.
Actually, one of my goals when I started Java Lords was I was hoping to create something that would, like a scene, and like I grew up with here, and just because I missed it so much. And I think we've kind of succeeded in doing that. It's not the scene, it's not like the punk rock scene, but it's definitely like a theater, music scene, yeah. Cousin Dan played his first show at our open mic here. A couple of bands have formed out of just hanging out here at Java Lords. A lot of plays have gotten created and written, and then you've been in there writing books too, so.
The neighborhood has had its share of fights for its existence. They've battled and won against several Goliaths, including Jimmy Carter, the Department of Transportation, big box retailers, and mixed-use developers. So far, they've won each time.
Back then, when they were trying to build Freedom Parkway, that was a big thing with, stop stop the highway. And that was, I remember that being a big political movement back in the late 80s.
By opposing this road, you're standing up for the very best in American tradition.
But it is absolute folly, it seems to me, politically and economically and any other way, to destroy or damage neighborhoods and parks if it is not necessary for a higher good.
I think that you got a group of true believers that are waging what they feel to be a kind of a crusade, and we've been very tolerant, and nobody's decided to take them on, and I think we're paying a price for it.
It was great to see how strong, because of what I initially felt, how strong this neighborhood was. I've never seen, this will never happen anywhere else in the country, where a community, a neighborhood will fight against a past president, President Carter, Mayor Andrew Young, who wanted this big road to come through, and said, no, we're going to fight this and fight this and fight till we get a good compromise.
I mean, that's the other thing that you got to really respect about the Little 5 Points Business Association is they have defended Little 5 Points from going the way of the big box and things like that. I mean, they're adamant about, no, you're not coming in here.
The grocery store, Mr. Kim wanted to sell, and after a number of years, and Rite Aid wanted to come. I can try to fight that legally. I didn't need to, because the neighborhood decided that they were going to have a little rally on a Saturday, and we don't want the big box in here. We don't, the David and Goliath type of scenario, and we were the lead story on 2 of the 3 networks that Saturday afternoon and evening, and it was great to see the support that the community gave me. And
we're freaks, that's all. Those 2 bastards got us nice and early and made us into freaks with freakish standards. That's all. We're the tattooed lady, and we're never going to have a minute's peace the rest of our lives until everybody else is tattooed too. J.D. Salinger.
But then it was a super cool scene. Then it was the square didn't have fences around the park area, and it was actually like a long grass strip before they kind of chunked it up into pieces. But it used to be one big kind of L shape where there'd be 100, 200 punk rockers hanging out, listening to skateboarding, listening to music.
Well, we certainly sold a lot of punk music. A lot of times we got asked after a while when they see that we had this, and this. It's like, hey, Danny, hey, Harry, can you all get me the new Sham 69 album? And we, sure, yes. Oh, that'd be great. While you're at it, can you get me the Descendants and the, and I could start naming them all off, but no point in that.
And I was in high school in Chattanooga, so we would drive back and forth from Chattanooga to Atlanta to come to Little 5 Points to go record shopping. And if you wanted to see punk rock music, you had to come to Atlanta. So we would drive down the 1.5 to 2 hour drive and come to Little 5 Points just about every weekend.
And there was, of course, a skinhead contingent, and some of the skinheads were really pretty passive guys, and some were like rednecks without hair.
Oh yeah, Skins were here, but Skins and Little 5 Points we were all friends, really. It was like in, I want to say 86 to 88, somewhere, some DC Skins came down that were real neo-Nazi type. Before that, there was a black dude who used to be one of the skinheads, like, and wore his boots and braces and shaved his head just like everyone else. His name was Wendell, and but they were all friends. It didn't get weird and polarized till after like the DC Skins came down, and then like a bunch of kids from Marietta and Alpharetta started coming down and hanging out, and that's what they thought it was supposed to be. But it used to be it was really a community, and it didn't matter what you were. I always had long hair even back then, and they called me a hair farmer. That was about the extent of They're like, how's your crop coming in, you know?
What should young people do with their lives today? Many things, obviously, but the most daring thing is to create stable communities in which the terrible disease of loneliness can be cured. Kurt Vonnegut.
The thing I loved about the art scene in Little 5 Points in particular and in Atlanta was that it was still raw. It still had a very raw, rough edge, and you could still push those boundaries and do things with the support of the community that a lot of other art communities may find offensive or aggressive.
I went to art school, and that doubled with being part of like an arts community, like definitely helped that thrive. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that I make a living doing my art, but I don't have to because, you know, I live in a place where people appreciate art and we can talk about it.
I found myself in 1999 driving into the neighborhood for this interview, not knowing anything about Atlanta. Literally, it was just on a whim. And I drove into the neighborhood and just saw color and life and humanity that I knew I wanted to be a part of. It was immediate love for this neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, I got into like the drag community here. I started performing. I, you know, started hanging out, especially like here at Seven Stages and at Java Lords, and, you know, met like this burlesque community and got in with them, started doing shows with them, and sort of like found my tribe here in the neighborhood.
Well, I think that's still a place to find yourself because, like, how many neighborhoods on the planet Earth have a marching band that you can go to and be a member of with just with a smile? And then the hour before the band practices, the jugglers are outside practicing. So there's always been a sense of theater and freedom in this neighborhood. And if you don't cotton to it, then you need to get out.
To be around people that are trying to do things, it propels you to want to be better, do what you really should be doing rather than just sitting at home and eating macaroni and drinking boxed wine.
The punk scene from the 80s, like how it, you know, a lot of people started becoming shop owners. I mean, there's probably a 50-50 chance I could have been a street urchin at this point or own a shop, you know.
Right. Having been here forever, a lot of things that I think of as relatively new, I realize, oh gosh, you know, hippies, almost 30 years as as the yacht club, and the Vortex is already 20-something, I think. And it seems like they just bought Eat Your Vegetables yesterday.
I want to turn back the clock to when people lived in small villages and took care of each other. Pete Seeger.
What people may not realize about Little 5 Points is that there's a dentist office and a community bank. There's like a tax lawyer in Little 5 Points. You know, it's not just like your mall-ternative. It really is a like little community. It's not really a tourist trap, you know, it's like, it is a destination for people to come and see how a little village actually works, I think.
You can sustain your life in this one neighborhood, honestly. There are clothing stores, stores for like your spiritual needs. There's a grocery store or a co-op. I believe there's a masseuse in the neighborhood. There's a spa and like hair cutting place. At least a couple of tattoo places, and restaurants, and a bar like there's a nightlife as well. It's really kind of a special neighborhood because you really can live here.
Then there's Little 5 Points, you know, and it is a group of merchants who are nuts. You know, it's all retail. They want to sell some weird thing that they're into, a hobby, and you know, they try, and against all odds, most of the time it doesn't work out.
I don't think anything has changed and grown like Atlanta, just anywhere.
Gentrification and consumerism have destroyed the character of my favorite American haunts. Tom Hayden.
When I first showed up, and I lived in some of the houses too, most of these houses were split up into apartments in the neighborhood. Like the condos that are down the street were the skinhead apartments. That's where all the skins lived, in those apartments down there. And we just, called it Skinhead Row. It was just where everyone ended up living. Most of the houses you could live in really cheap, $200 a month or something like that to get a room or a little apartment that's carved out of something. And yeah, that's been weird, losing all of that and families coming in, and it's really a different neighborhood. It was, a little more ghetto down here kind of basically then.
Inman Park was completely affordable back then, and they hadn't built up anything. It was still, little old apartment buildings or little old converted houses that had apartments in it and stuff like that. And gradually everything that was here has been torn down now and replaced with these mixed use monstrosities.
It would be nice. There's still a little bit of affordable housing, not that much, and it's going away. The people that work here and myself, it's hard for us to live in the neighborhood anymore.
Gentrification has its ups and downs. It is there is a higher police presence now than there used to be. I wouldn't call it any safer, but it's definitely trying to be. I've seen a lot of townhomes and high rises sort of scoot in towards Little Five Points, but honestly, the heart of Little Five Points hasn't really changed very much. It's mostly the iris, not the cornea.
The artists come in and create a cool environment, and other people want to live there, and it gets ruined. Just no one intends for that to happen, but that's generally what happens.
Many people have met here, moved out, and they come back. They come back for shows at the Variety and have a drink here before and after. Sometimes with their kids who are grown. And it's I think it's a nice thing from that you see now in the 21st century, multi-generational families going out together. Going to see bands, patient children, going to see their dad's favorite band or his guitar hero, and but it's really cool.
It almost seemed like from the moment I got here, that sense of the tribe, we felt safe here, and people wanted to open businesses and live close by and enjoy the community.
I don't even remember the season. I just remember walking between them and feeling for the first time that I belong somewhere. Stephen Shabosky.
Like I said before, you're either drawn to the hub or flung off the wheel as it's spinning in this neighborhood. And I was definitely drawn to the hub,
It's a weird dysfunctional family, but they'll carry you home and they will put you in a car.
And then we have regulars that are still here who've never left, becoming fewer and fewer of them. They're mostly men and single. I call them lone wolves, and they're down at that end of the bar. You know who they are, and so they haven't left. And they could be anywhere from 60 to almost 80 years old. There's something about a person who can hang out in a bar that long. And there's a physiological part to being able just to drink and smoke that long, some of them have slowed down, but not all of them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. The people that I met here and am friends with now, they're like family. We do everything together constantly. And, anytime anybody falls on bad times, we hold benefit shows and, try to keep it all together, and that's awesome.
I think about the moment in which I decided to stay all the time, and it was a really long journey. As I said, I wouldn't sign a 6-month lease. I just knew that what I was finding here continue to challenge me, and I could learn from different experiences and people, and I just couldn't leave. So there wasn't just a snap and a moment where I was like, okay, this is my home.
I knew I was going to be right here for the rest of my life.
Maybe it's pure laziness. I got here and loved it, never felt like leaving.
I'm not going anywhere. No, people come and say, you can never retire. I said, no, I don't plan to retire. So I love what I do. As long as I love what I do, and I'll be here. I mean,
I almost feel closer to some of these people than I do to my family, because we really grew up together and have been friends for 30 years now and stuff.
If somebody had asked me, well, do you think you'll still be doing this when you're 66? And I'd probably tell them roughly what I just told you, that let's see what fate has in store for me.